Imagine you and your friends have been planning for months. You have a strategy, you have the right people, and you are ready to compete. Then one morning, you wake up and your entire plan is on fire. Not because you made a mistake, but because someone with far more power than you quietly ensured it would burn.
And the smoke is leading straight to the presidential villa in Abuja. Here's the full picture. As Nigeria begins to seriously count down to the 2027 general elections, the political space has been heating up in a way that should concern every single one of you watching this video. A powerful group of opposition heavyweights, including former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, former Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi, and ex-Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai, made a bold and historic decision to come together under one roof and challenge President Tinubu and the ruling All Progressive Congress. The party they chose as their vehicle? The African Democratic Congress, popularly known as the ADC. This was not a small move. Peter Obi formally defected to the ADC alongside his supporters, National Assembly lawmakers, and several other prominent opposition figures. The ADC, under the leadership of Senator David Mark, was being positioned as a potential political earthquake, a single unified platform where Atiku, Obi, Amechi, and El-Rufai and others could pool their energy, their resources, and their supporters in one direction. Nigerians who had grown tired of the APC leaned in. Political analysts took note. For the first time in a while, the opposition looked like it actually had a plan. If you are watching this and you care about Nigerian democracy, please hit that like button right now and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps us bring you stories like this every single week. Stories that the average Nigerian needs to hear. And then, almost as if on cue, the crisis started. The ADC began to crack. Legal disputes erupted over who legitimately leads the party, competing factions started filing court cases against each other, questions arose about the validity of the party's executive structure, INEC got pulled into the confusion. What had looked like a united opposition coalition was now bleeding from the inside. Political editors began advising prominent figures to quietly start looking for another platform, warning that the ADC was now weighed down by multiple legal and structural challenges that could destroy its viability as a coalition vehicle before the elections even began. To those watching on the surface, it looked like the opposition simply failed to manage its own internal affairs. But a critical group of voices inside the ADC were saying something far more alarming. This chaos is not organic. This chaos has a sponsor. And that sponsor, they allege, sits in the highest office in the land. Now, here's where the story gets truly explosive. Last week, President Tinubu was hosting a group called the Renewed Hope Ambassadors at the Presidential Villa in Abuja. A group specifically set up to communicate his administration's agenda to Nigerians across the country. And in the middle of that gathering, the president began speaking about the ADC and the opposition. He dared them. He told them directly that he could not be scared by their so-called conspiracy. He said despite what he called a gang-up against him, he would not give up. And then he went further. He accused former Vice President Atiku Abubakar of trying to privatize the ADC, and he advised the opposition in the same breath to be good Democrats and obey court orders and the rule of law. Now, to many Nigerians, those remarks might have sounded like the bold confidence of a sitting president dismissing political rivals, competitive, presidential even. But a critical group of voices inside the ADC heard something far more alarming. This chaos had a confession. In a statement released on Sunday, the group secretary, Idris Bala, said the president's comments confirmed what Nigerians had long suspected. He argued that a sitting president does not walk into a room and start making specific, detailed claims about the internal ownership battles of an opposition party unless that president has been closely monitoring and perhaps directing those battles from behind the scenes. They asked a very pointed question. Why would the highest office in Nigeria be so invested in who controls a small opposition party unless that control serves the ruling party's interests? The group also pushed back firmly on the allegation that Atiku was trying to privatize the ADC. Their response was sharp and clear. The ADC is not a private estate that can be auctioned to the highest bidder. It is a legally registered political party owned by Nigerians across all 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory, with its leadership having emerged through processes consistent with the Electoral Act, INEC guidelines, and the 1999 Constitution. They described the president's framing as deliberately misleading. And then they raised a concern that goes beyond party politics, one that should make every Nigerian stop and think. They warned that the president's remarks could be seen as an attempt to influence ongoing legal proceedings involving the ADC at a time when those cases are still active before the courts. In a functioning democracy, that kind of interference, real or perceived, is not just inappropriate, it's dangerous. But the grassroots mobilization network did not stop there. They zoomed out. They pointed to a pattern that stretches across the entire Nigerian opposition landscape. They referenced how in 2023, political figures like Peter Obi and Rabiu Kwankwaso were able to contest the presidential election on separate party platforms without facing this kind of alleged interference from the federal government at the time. They then looked at what has happened since Tinubu took office. The PDP has been consumed by its own internal crisis, the Labour Party has fractured, and now the ADC, the opposition's latest and most ambitious project, is fighting for survival in the courtroom. Is it all a coincidence? 3 major opposition parties, each experiencing existential internal crises, all within the same political cycle? The Grassroots Mobilization Network doesn't think so. They allege a deliberate, coordinated pattern, a systematic effort to weaken every viable opposition platform and clear the path towards something Nigerians have never experienced before in the post-military era, a one-party state. That's a heavy accusation, but it's one that respected voices in Nigerian civil society, legal circles, and the media are beginning to echo with increasing seriousness. The group's statement makes clear that they are calling on Nigerians, the judiciary, civil society organizations, and even the international community to take note of what they describe as a dangerous slide in the country's democratic foundations. This is exactly the kind of story that needs to reach as many Nigerians as possible. Share this video with someone right now. Like it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Together, we stay informed. Together, we hold power accountable. So, where does this leave the ADC, and where does this leave Nigeria? The Grassroots Mobilization Network insists the party remains united under its recognized leadership and is committed to continuing as a credible alternative political platform. But the road ahead is uncertain. With conflicting court rulings still unresolved and the 2027 election window slowly closing, the ADC has very little time to stabilize before it becomes politically irrelevant. What is clear, however, is the bigger lesson this moment is teaching all of us. The value of your vote, every Nigerian's vote, depends entirely on having real, genuine choices on election day. When opposition parties are weakened through legal manipulation, political infiltration, or direct pressure from those in power, the person who loses the most is not Atiku Abubakar or Peter Obi or Nasir El-Rufai. The person who loses the most is the ordinary Nigerian sitting at home, hoping that the next election will finally bring the change that makes their daily life a little bit better. A democracy without real competition is not a democracy. It is stage play with a script that was written long before you walked into the theater. The presidency has denied no wrongdoing, the ADC crisis continues, and Nigeria is watching. The question now is, are you watching too? More importantly, what are you going to do with what you know? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. I read every single one. Do you think the presidency is behind the ADC crisis, or is the opposition simply destroying itself? Tell me below. And if this video gave you something to think about, please like it, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe so you never miss a story like this one. See you in the next one.